What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Simpli-Fly, where we're breaking down the ACS piece by piece. Now, we got a little bit of a special upload today for a couple of reasons. One, we've got the setup finally. Now, I know it's nothing crazy, but I need you guys to keep in mind that I didn't even have a desk before, and I needed one that fit right. In the place that I was filming, it got taken over by different furniture, and I just want the videos to look good for you guys. So here we are. Over time, it's gonna get tweaked, I'm sure, but finally, I've got an official setup somewhere that I can record for you guys. And what that also means is videos are gonna be coming at the very least every 3 days now. And I'd say that's pretty celebration worthy. On any given day, I'm gonna be either filming multiple videos, editing and uploading, or doing my other jobs that I have to attend to actually make money. But the point is, it's gonna be a more consistent schedule now that I have a solid filming location, and I'm determined to start pumping these videos out quickly for you guys. The other reason this video is special is because we're gonna cover 2 topics in one video, since it took a while for me to get back with the setup, and because the first one is really short. So we're gonna get right into it, but before we do, I just want to explain something. So the cutouts that I've been using in my videos for the ACS, these ones right here for task A and B, those are in the format of the older ACS. They're not actually from the current ACS. I was just using them because that's what I already had in my file, but I took a look at the updated ACS, and luckily the codes that I made videos for task A and task B have been all the same up until now for task C. Task C looks completely different than the old format that I was using, so now we're on the fresh format. The previous videos are still the correct code for the correct topic. There's just one that they added that I didn't do, so I'm gonna go back and do that one soon. And that one's owner operator slash pilot in command responsibilities, I believe. So we'll be making a video on that one soon, but for now we're still gonna start on weather, and we're gonna take a look at the new ACS weather format because it's actually pretty interesting. The first part is the same, which is our acceptable sources of weather. That's K1. And then after that, there's 2 notes, and it basically states that if K2 is selected, then the examiner has to ask you about 3 of the categories. And then the second note says if K3 is selected, then you have to talk about 3 of the categories from K3. And I would say this is a good change of format for the ACS because before it didn't actually mention some of the weather products that are in the ACS. So if an examiner asked a student about it and they didn't know, technically that's not in the ACS, but it's like, how do you not know this type situation? So the way that we're gonna do it is we're not gonna go through K2 all in one video and cover K2a, K2b, K2c. Instead, we're gonna start with K1 today, and then we're gonna move to K2 and do K2a, the first one, which is METAR, SPECI, and PIREP. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about the first part, which is our acceptable sources of weather. So it's really simple. There's not that many sources of weather that we are allowed to use officially. First one we've got is aviationweather.gov. Now, this is like the ultimate source of weather. And I say that because it's literally got every single tool in the book. It's got tools that we won't even be covering in this series. But as we move forward into task C, we're gonna be talking a lot about different weather products, all of which can be found on aviationweather.gov. In the same vein, if you're looking at aviationweather.gov and you're so confused and you don't know what you're looking at, the next one's going to be extremely helpful for you, which is 1-800-WX-BRIEF. So you're going to want to go online and make an account with them beforehand so that when you call them, you're not sitting in line for 20 minutes. But once you've done that, you can call them and you can essentially get a weather briefing for any flight that you may be doing. Even if you're not doing a flight, you can just explain that to the briefer and just say, I need a report on this area, and he'll use information from around that area to give you some observations and forecasts. If you're confused about what you're seeing on aviationweather.gov, the briefers are using all the same tools on aviationweather.gov that you're seeing. So when you're looking at these tools and learning how to interpret them, you can look at them and say, okay, this is my depiction of what I think this area's weather is like based on what these tools are saying. And then you can give the weather briefer a call and ask him what he thinks about the weather in the area and see how correct your interpretation is. and you'll start to be able to line up the dots of where he's getting this information. You can also call the briefers in the air, but you're not going to use this phone number in the air. You may have heard of the frequency 122.2. That is the Universal Flight Service Station frequency. And if you're en route and you need an update on the weather, you can tune into that frequency and get all the same information that you're going to be getting from 1-800-WX-BRIEF in the air. All right, and last but not least, we've got ForeFlight, and not everybody has ForeFlight. You don't need it to fly. I think it's a fantastic tool. But I personally didn't actually use it for the most of my weather research when I would be pre-flight planning. Most of the time I really only used ForeFlight for its METARs and TAFs because they just have that decoder that makes life so easy. But when it comes to the majority of weather planning, I was using the weather briefer almost every time in my training, and I encourage instructors and flight schools to make their students call the briefer before every flight, honestly. Even if the weather looks perfect outside, calling the weather briefer and practicing talking to them just makes you understand the tools on aviationweather.gov so much quicker and easier, I promise you guys. That being said, ForeFlight has a lot of the same textual and graphical weather information on it. It's just in its own little section on there. But ultimately, it's the same information that you're going to be getting from aviationweather.gov as well. And that's because all three of these sources are getting their information from the National Weather Service. So ultimately, you really have one acceptable source of weather when you really think about it, but there's just different ways of getting that acceptable source of weather. But yeah, when you type aviationweather.gov, it just takes you to the National Weather Service. So it's the same thing. All right, now we're gonna cut to K2. I'm gonna erase this and write that section, but for you guys, it'll be instant. And we're back. So now we're on K2. And remember, the note at the top, if we're gonna pick K2, you gotta be able to talk about at least 3. If your examiner picks K3, then you gotta be able to talk about at least 3 of those. So we're not gonna cover all of K2 in one video and then all of K3 in one video because the video would just be way too long for how long I take to explain things. But what we will do is break it down per video. So starting with K2, this section is our acceptable weather products and resources required for our pre-flight planning. So basically these are the different tools we're gonna use. And so we're gonna need tools for both current and forecast weather for our departure, en route, and arrival phases of flight. All the ones they want you to know in the ACS are in K2a through K2f. And there are a lot more tools on aviationweather.gov that they're not listing here. And they are definitely worth learning, but first things first, tackle what you have to know for your check ride for sure. So we're gonna start with K2a, which is our METAR/SPECI and PIREPs. Now, METAR is an acronym. It's a classic aviation style acronym. It stands for Aviation Routine Weather Report. Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. Now, taking a look back here, look at the verbiage here, current/forecast weather for. Now, when you see that, I want you to think current observation/forecasts, because those are basically the two tools that we have. We have, here's what the weather's gonna be like now, and here's what the weather's gonna be like in a few hours from now, or over here in a few hours from now. So if I had to ask you, is a METAR an observation or a forecast? What would you say? If you said observation, you'd be correct. Your METAR is telling you what's happening basically right now. So when you're pre-flight planning, you're trying to take a look at what the weather's like at the airport that you're at, or maybe you're trying to take a look at the weather, what it's currently like at the airport you're going to. Aside from just looking outside and trying to observe, you're going to be using the METAR a lot. Any airport that issues METARs is going to be issuing them every hour, 55 minutes past the hour. And each METAR is valid until it's updated. Now, METARs come in this outdated textual format that was originally intended to save space, and we don't really need to save space as much anymore, but they're probably not going to change it. And the best thing that you can do for your check ride is learn how to interpret the METARs on their own. Don't use the decoder every time, because if you only use the decoder and you don't know how to look at a METAR and decipher it, and your DP wants you to do that, he's not going to be very impressed. So in a METAR report, I'll put a random one on screen and I'll highlight which each part is telling you, but we're not going to really go deep into a breakdown for this video. So your METAR is going to show you your winds, your visibility, sky conditions, your temperature and the dew point, the altimeter setting, weather in the vicinity of the airport, and any remarks. If you guys want to see how I decode METARs and get a really helpful tool for the remarks section for all those abbreviations, hit like on this video. If I see 25 likes and some comments talking about I want to see the METARs decoded, I'll make a METAR decoding video. All right, next we've got our SPECI. And the way that you can think of this one's not actually what it stands for or anything, it's just like a special report or like a special METAR. And that's because these are formatted in the same way that a METAR is, except these are only put out when the weather is changing significantly enough, quick enough, basically. Now, I'm gonna give you something that no other instructor gave me, and I haven't really even seen people talk about it online when talking about SPECIs, but it's literally just the AIM, and that's AIM 7-1-2. That section of the AIM gives you a SPECI issuance table, because I was always curious, okay, what's the criteria for a SPECI? Oh, when the weather changes enough, when it's a significant enough weather change. No one ever gave me a solid answer, and we don't need to go through the entire table because SPECI is not a huge topic in the check ride, but I'll give you a couple examples. So wind, for example. Wind direction changes by 45 degrees or more in less than 15 minutes, and the wind speed is 10 knots or more throughout the wind shift. So it's not just if the wind is changing rapidly, significantly enough. That's just not, it wasn't a measurable enough answer for me. This is measurable. If your wind's changing more than 45 degrees and it's higher than 10 knots, that's gonna be enough for them to issue a SPECI. Here's another one for precipitation. Hail begins or ends. Freezing precipitation begins, ends, or changes intensity. Ice pellets begin, end, or change intensity. And snow begins, ends, or changes intensity. They've got different criteria for storms, for your ceilings, for your visibility and sky condition. So if you're curious about the criteria for a SPECI, go check out the AIM 7-1-2. All right, and the last part of K2A is our PIREP, or a pilot report. Now, a PIREP comes in two forms. It's gonna be either UA or UUA, and the difference between those two is just whether it's routine, UA, or urgent / like an emergency, UUA. PIREPs are also in their own different format. They look similar to METARs, but they're formatted differently. And again, we're not going to break down how to decode the PIREP in this video because it would just turn the video into a much longer one. But PIREPs always confused me trying to decode them compared to the others for some reason when I was learning. So if you're the same and you would like a video on how to decode PIREPs and some helpful tools for that one, again, let's see 25 likes and let's see some comments about PIREPs and I'll make a PIREP video. But I still want to give you the tools for you to seek out the information on your own if you're curious about it. So for PIREPs, you can check out AIM 7-1-18. That section tells you about PIREPs, why they're useful, who uses them, and it also gives you an element chart which shows you the different codes that are used in PIREPs, which is really, really helpful when you're learning how to decode them. How long is a PIREP valid for? Essentially, as long as the weather is persisting. That's why it's helpful for as many pilots as possible to put out PIREPs, because if you've got a 3-hour-old PIREP that you're basing your information on, that might be significantly different now, and if there's someone up there who could give you an update on that and they put out a PIREP, it would probably help you in your pre-flight planning a lot. Now, when you're learning to fly, literally getting your private pilot license, I know that filing a PIREP in the air can seem pretty complicated and stressful, but if you've got the time during your cross-country training or something, I encourage asking your instructor how to do it. My instructor never offered, so I kind of had to learn on my own. But try and take advantage of that time to do it for real. That way you can see that it's actually not that crazy. If your flight is very task saturated and there's just no way that you're going to be able to put a PIREP in, and say you're just trying to get to the ground, there's nothing wrong with calling in and putting a PIREP in once you land either, and telling them what the weather you were getting when you were in the air. Ultimately, the more PIREPs there are, the more knowledgeable we are about the weather that day and the safer decisions we can make. So instructors, I encourage you to make your students learn how to file PIREPs, and students, I encourage you to ask your instructor how to do it. But again, for decoding the METAR or the PIREP, 25 likes and some comments, I'll make some METAR and PIREP videos. As for today though, that's gonna be all for the video. As always, if this video was helpful to you guys, please like and subscribe, comment down below. I've been loving seeing your guys' comments about keep uploading or like hurry up, Garrett. And like I said, going forward, we got the setup, more frequent uploads are happening. 3 days at least, every 3 days, our videos are gonna be coming out. If you wanna check out my socials, my Instagram is here. I don't post on it a ton, but I post on it here and there if you want to see more personal look. But yeah, anyway guys, make sure you stay tuned for K2b in a couple days, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. I'll see you next time.